I am just blessed and fortunate as a first generation immigrant to have come to the United States with literally $500, a backpack, a suitcase, sense of humor, sense of adventure, and landed in the United States and just saw the incredible opportunity that exists here.
Welcome to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast, where our vision is to inspire busy professionals, especially first and second generation immigrants and Americans, to explore the state of the American dream in 2022 and beyond. That is the Trinity of Freedom: time, financial, and geography freedom. I'm your host, Missy Laub, and I have achieved financial independence, and I'm helping many others to do the same. I started out with $5,000 and have really built wealth for my family along the process. Now I'm on a mission to help hundreds of thousands of people like me to do the same.
Welcome to another episode of the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast. We're on episode 17. Today, we're with MC Laubscher, a friend and also a speaker at some of my events previously. I wanted to give you his formal intro because he's not just a husband, a dad, he's also an entrepreneur, investor, and an educator. And on the education part, his passion is really to share how investors and business owners can create, recover, and also warehouse multiple cash flows through advanced cash flow strategies, which we'll probably talk more about in the next episode on the education portion. But actually, as an investor himself, he also invests in many different areas, mostly in real estate and other alternative investment assets as well. He also is the founder of the Cashflow Ninja and the creator of the host of the top-rated business and investing podcast, Cashflow Ninja and Cashflow Investing Secrets. The podcast has been downloaded more than 1 million times over 180 countries and has been featured as one of the top 48 podcasts for entrepreneurs by Entrepreneurs magazine, and is regularly featured as one of the top 100 podcasts by Apple Podcasts as well. And he is also the president of the Producers Wealth, a wealth firm that assists investors and business owners to implement advanced cash flow strategies. He's also the principal at Producers Capital Partners, an investment firm that helps investors invest in alternative cash flow investments. So he's got so many things moving here. So I just can't wait to dive into what he's working on and how he's also not only helping others, like being able to balance it all together as well. First of all, anything I missed in the bio, MC, that you want to add on there?
No, appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to dive into our conversation, but yeah, I am just blessed and fortunate as a first generation immigrant to have come to the United States with literally $500, a backpack, a suitcase, sense of humor, sense of adventure, and landed in the United States and just saw the incredible opportunity that exists here. So I've just taken full advantage of it and continue to take full advantage of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to dive into that first generation immigrant story a little bit. We know you're a successful educator, helping others build wealth, and an investor yourself. But how did you get started in the US? How did you come here? Tell us a little bit of the backstory on that.
Yeah, so I traveled quite a bit and I ended up in the United States because I did a rugby scholarship in university and I aspired to play at the highest level rugby. And at the same time that I graduated, there was a league that was really taking off in the United States. So I ended up playing in that league here. And initially, when I first just came, I was just going to come and play for a couple of years in this league. And I was probably going to go back to South Africa. But once I got here, I started to just see the incredible opportunity that exists here. It's something that Americans have taken for granted that I think immigrants, when they land here, they look at the United States and they go, oh my goodness, if you were born here, like you literally won a lottery ticket, because the upward mobility that's available in the US isn't available in many parts of the world. I would argue in the most parts of the world. So it's literally a place where you can go from rags to riches. And there's so many success stories. Even Americans that are here, right? They are born in government housing projects, as they call it, in bad neighborhoods. They go to schools in there, but they can essentially work their way out of that and become billionaires, which some of them have. I think that's also why Forbes magazine did a story on immigrants and all the immigrants, multimillionaires and billionaires in the United States. And they were kind of like posing the question, why? How is it possible that all these immigrants come to the US and they do so well? It's because they just see the incredible opportunity, because there's not a lot of countries that allow that upward mobility. In most countries, when you're born into a certain circumstance, you basically you're stuck. And it's very rare. You're almost a unicorn if you escape that circumstance. Where in the United States, the playing field is pretty much level. The infrastructure exists here. It doesn't matter where you're from, what the color of your skin is, what your culture is, what language you speak. If you come here and you work your butt off and you bring your best efforts, your best ideas, and you go for your dreams, you can make it happen. I mean, I'm South African, obviously, growing up during a very interesting time during South Africa's history, and ended up here. And I look at what a fellow South African is doing, like Elon Musk. It's just incredible. So, he's a dreamer. So,
Yeah, it's a pretty high bar to set there with Elon Musk for sure.
yeah, exactly. So, no, but
Yeah.
it just shows you, there's so many incredible entrepreneurs that just in our space, in the investment space too. There's a gentleman that I've interviewed on my show, for example, Patrick Bet-David. I mean, his family literally escaped Iran. He was in a refugee camp in Germany. He ended up in the United States, joined the military, a multimillionaire, running one of the biggest entertainment platforms and educational platforms, Valuetainment, and he built a incredible insurance company. He's in one of the markets that I operate in. That's why I continue to follow Patrick, and anyone should, but it just shows you what can be done. So the
Yeah.
immigrant mindset is much different too, though. And I think, like, you see that, in successful societies, it's that saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, essentially. Americans
Yep.
during the Second World War were really hard. And then they built an incredible life for their children, which are the baby boomers, right? The World War II generation had the baby boomers for kids. And the baby boomers got a little softer, and they got a great life. And then all of a sudden, the baby boomers' kids, they got a little softer too. And, the following generation too. So they've kind of lost that fight. It's going to come back. And then you get folks that have to fight for everything, that tooth and nail, from a different country, that end up in this environment. The immigrant mindset is just, they'll do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Yeah. It's really about supply and demand, because a lot of us come from a country where the equal opportunity doesn't exist, whether you quote in quotation marks what you believe it as is, doesn't exist, or isn't very often. So we're really grasp onto it really hard as we
Yep.
come here. And then moving to the next portion, kind of the investing piece. A lot of us start out working very hard, just trading time for money. Then we're like, well, I'm going to max myself out if I just put in more hours without burning myself out, or just trying to get to a higher paying job. And that's still so limited. So when did your mindset start shifting to the investing piece and the scalability of the investing piece as an investor, as you work through life yourself or interview hundreds of guests on your show, specifically focused on cash flow, producing more of a passive income for their lifestyle?
So I got a book from my mom, Rich Dad Poor Dad, from Robert Kiyosaki. She gave me this book in 2001. So when I was traveling a lot for sports, people play video games, they just read magazines. I was that guy on the plane or on the bus that read books. So I love history and economics. Those were my majors in university. And I love to question everything, and especially the status quo, because I grew up in South Africa, and it went from totalitarian apartheid regime to a country which held their first elections, like democratic elections. And essentially there was a lot of changes. So I didn't know what to believe as a young man, because everything was just conflicting. And then I started to realize maybe everybody's lying, and maybe I have to go out and seek the truth. And I did that with regards to everything that I tackled. Money was no different. So then I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. I bought my first property 6 months later. I took action. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know what I got myself into, but I had tenants in there that paid the rent. I paid all of the expenses associated with, and there was money left over at the end of the month. And I'm like, wow, cash flow, just like in the book. And as I was playing rugby then, I did a lot of stupid things in my life, but the one smart thing that I figured out is that if you want to accomplish something, find someone that's already done it and learn from them. And that's kind of what I did with investing. So when I bought that first property, I took action, had success, and then of course school starts because it's real estate. Shocking that things happen in real estate. You have tenant issues that you have to deal with and so forth. But I had a friend that his family owned like one of the largest multifamily portfolios on the north side of Chicago. So they were the go-to people in real estate on that side of the city. And I met him through rugby. And essentially, I couldn't hold a job at that time because I was just playing sports all the time, but I could work part-time for them. So I literally started at the bottom. I started cleaning up, picking up trash on their multifamily properties. That's where my true investing career started. Because again, the immigrant mentality, it's an opportunity. I'm going to start picking up trash on a multifamily property where most people in the US would think, oh, that's beneath them, essentially. And then I started to work on apartment turnovers, painting apartments, to running construction crews for them. Then I got into property management, did leasing, worked with vendors for the building. So I got more into the property management, eventually managed around 500 units for them, but got part of acquisitions, got my broker's license. So that's kind of like where I started. And then what I realized, and I think this is important too, a part of my story. As a broker at that time, I was targeting this one investor that I knew that wanted to sell properties, and I was contacting him all the time. He never got back to me. So one morning, like around 7:30, I get into the real estate office. And that same person that I was trying to hunt down for like 6 months just walked out of my friend's partner's office, and he sold his entire portfolio of properties to them. And I sat there as a young guy, and I'm like, what just happened? What just happened here? This is a learning opportunity, I guess, lesson. And I started to realize that the game is played at a higher level. These people were cash flow ninjas. They were the go-to people in their markets. No one is going to buy or sell real estate without talking to them first. If you're going to sell, you're going to go to them because if they're not going to buy a property, they will buy it and flip it to an investor that they know is looking for that type of property. And I started to realize I can't compete with these guys. And then I changed my mindset to how can I partner with them? And that's the approach that I took on my investing career. Because a lot of people look at me and they say, you're invested in so many things from multifamily to resorts, to oil and gas deals, to life settlement deals, to all of these different asset classes. How are you able to do that? And the approach is that I educate myself, I immerse myself in an asset class, but then I find that cash flow ninja that's in that space, that person that is the go-to person. The one exists in every market, right? They exist. So instead of competing with them, I partner with them, and then I get to invest in the best deals with the best operators in the best markets, in the asset classes that I want to. So even though I started out as a, kind of do-it-yourself person, and I did all the things myself, I'm like, this is a lot of heavy lifting. How can I leverage tools to have the lifting not be as heavy? And one of the ways to do that was, yes, I'm a cash flow investor. Yes, I'm an investor. And through businesses, I was going to generate capital. And then I'm going to find cash flow ninjas and invest the capital with the best operators in the best deals and the best markets.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I intend to approach a lot of those things as well. The truth is, as you're starting out, it's hard to be everyone and everything. One side, you need to find investors or even invest in them in a soft deal flow and just too many things going on. So with that, what are the typical red flags you see on finding the good sponsors? Obviously, background checks and looking at their track record. Anything specifics or different you want to highlight in those general areas?
Yeah, I date a lot before I marry. So I'm not going to meet someone and do a deal with them right away. There's a lot of folks that I watch and that I meet and that I get to know. And this will take, 6 months, a year, 2 years. It all depends. So I watch what they do. I build a relationship. And then a lot of people I've met through great people. This is kind of nice. It becomes a snowball effect because great people know other great people. But in the beginning, Do your due diligence. Look them up online. Look at their track record. And the other thing, too, is look at the people that they're doing deals with. Who are the investors that they're partnering with? Who's on the team that's managing the deal? Because it's all about the people. And if they're partnering with great people and they have a great team, then that tells me that, because following that one rule of mine that, great people usually know other great people. It's very rare that there's a very nefarious character or an undesirable character that is just knows all these great people and does deal with all these great people. I'm not saying it can't happen, but no, you just look at the people that they surround them with. That'll give you an indication, number one. And then look at their track record, look at taking a deal full cycle. Here's the other thing what I would say too. Look at experience too. And I'm not saying when people are inexperienced that this is a bad thing. If they're inexperienced, then they need to do the deal with a very experienced partner so they can kind of bring in a mentor that's guiding the deal. So if someone's young and they approach me, I'm not immediately casting it aside and saying that I'm not going to do a deal with that person. I look at, all right, who are you partnering with? Who's your mentor? Who's doing the deal with you? Because that person might have 20 to 30 years experience. So, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for folks that have been through cycles, because things just don't go up. They go down too. And when they go down, it's ugly. I remember I was there in 2008 and 2009. It was very bad. We've had an incredible run since 2011, 2012 to now. I mean, it's basically been like a decade of a bull market in specifically like the real estate. So you got to invest with folks that have been through downturns, because you have to invest a little bit differently, underwrite your deals a little bit differently. Because if you do the same things that you've been doing for the past decade, it's going to be ugly. And I mean, very ugly. People have just seen the good side, right? Oh my goodness, I got this X on this exit with this deal and this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
nobody's seen bankruptcies, divorces, suicides, market plummet, foreclosures. I mean, 2008 was really, really bad. And I see it as a blessing that I was there to see that and also see the good side. But I remember what it was like back then. And most people don't. There's a lot of new people in our space, and there's a lot of new people that came in. So yeah, that's kind of how I evaluate operators these days.
This podcast is sponsored by Life Mission Capital, founded by me, Missy Liu, where my life mission is to help busy professionals invest well so they can focus on what matters. All my life, I was taught to study and work hard for my freedom, until one day I realized that unless I let my money work hard for me, I will always be trading my most precious resource, time, for freedom. Since then, we have also been helping our investors passively diversify into more than 1,000 units of recession and inflation-resistant alternative investments, such as multifamily, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, and more. Learn more with our free ebooks at lifemissioncapital.com.
Understand. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things changing in the market, especially the most important piece, the debt piece. There's a lot of changes in that, and how to really navigate the debt piece to make sure sustainable growth during the business plan. So as you have all this investment experiences, what are some of the personal worst investments you have done and lessons learned from it compared to the best investments? Any examples? It could be across real estate or other alternative investments as well.
Yeah, I think like the worst deals that I've did was actually just like the people involved. Because when I was younger, I was more trusting, I would say. And now I'm more cautious. That's why I date a lot before I get married. We're not going to get married after the first date. And I think that's where I got burned. So don't rush into something. And as an investor too, you have to be very cognizant of knowing when you are making decisions based on emotion or when you're actually thinking clearly, performing your proper analysis and making decisions based on the actual deal and the numbers rather than you feel like you're missing out. FOMO. I don't have FOMO. I have JOMO. FOMO is fear of missing out. I have JOMO, joy of missing out. Even if I miss out on a deal that is a home run, I don't regret that, because if there was something that didn't make me do it, I trust my decision making now more. So yeah, don't rush into things emotionally or just because everybody else is doing it. Think for yourself, figure it out, make decisions based on the actual data and information and the deal, not based on emotions. So bad people making decisions on emotions, you're always going to get hurt there. The deals that have worked out for me is I took my time. The people were great. I made decisions based on the actual data. I made decisions based on the information, the actual deal. And I'm huge on kind of like a macroeconomic look, which has served me pretty well because it's helped me identify when things change, big picture, before they change small picture. And what I mean by that is sometimes things can change from a macroeconomic standpoint before it filters down to where you are in your market and what you see in your market. So identifying things early will serve you very well.
Yeah, definitely. Having a kind of a checklist, maybe not 100 questions, but like a few key things that you want to be able to check out rather than making emotional decisions. On our website, we do have a list of 100 questions people can ask and look at before they invest at lifemissioncapital.com, just as we're relevant on that topic. On the other piece is about the good investment decisions and how you're looking at macroeconomics. I wanted to follow up on that. Some other things, as an example, is that we're being a little bit more careful on is, do they have long-term debts, in fixed long-term debts in case of economic turbulences, as there's still a lot of uncertainties going into it. And also, do they have a rate cap on the debt piece, an exit rate cap, just on the real estate piece in general? What are some of the other indicators you're a lot more focused on right now to say, hey, this is not going to work for me because this is like this and so like that?
Those are two very, very good things that you just mentioned because the theme there is debt market. If you think about it, real estate is debt, essentially. The game that we're playing with multifamily, it's debt. So essentially, if you don't know anything about debt and debt markets, when you're a real estate investor, you have to study this because you're essentially playing a game in the debt market. So from a big picture macroeconomic perspective is you have to understand what's going on with debt. The debt market is like, I don't know, 5+ times bigger than the equity markets. It's the largest market on the planet. It essentially is found everywhere. And what I mean by that is most people through their qualified retirement plans is in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Bonds are debt. Pensions have a huge amount of debt in them because a pension essentially is there to draw an income stream from. And the income stream will be paid out to the person that is getting the pension. So a big part of that portfolio to be able to produce that for pensioners is debt because debt pays an income. So you need to understand the debt market. You need to understand interest rates. You need to understand why interest rates are going up, what might be in store for interest rates. Most people just look at the real estate itself, the deal, the market. Oh, this is great. There's a lot of people moving there. There's a lot of industries moving there. All these things, and those could all be great. Great operators, great partners, great team, great property management. You go down the whole list. But if the debt is not set up correctly, and if the debt on the investment, the property, doesn't have the things that you're talking about, I mean, you could have the greatest piece of property in the greatest market with the greatest team, greatest property management team, great partners, great investors. It's still going to blow up. So very important what you just brought up. Real estate is debt. You gotta know and understand debt. It's, by the way, very boring to study and not a whole lot of fun, but it'll make you a better investor and it'll make you look at the world much differently if you look at it through the eyes of debt, because we are in a debt-based monetary system. If you want to even bring it even more macro. So in a debt-based monetary system where money is debt itself, probably need to figure out how debt works.
Yeah, very important piece for sure on investment economics. With just our livelihood of how our day-to-day livelihood may be impacted, understanding that is definitely important. Going back to that, are there any books you recommend on the debt or just that has helped you on your investment journey? or any resources in general that you
A
like to
very
share?
good book to read right now, and I'm actually going to reread it. It's G. Edward Griffin's The Creature from Jekyll Island. The book is playing out right in front of us. He wrote that in the 90s. By the way, fun fact, I've been to Jekyll Island. That's where they conceived the Federal Reserve. They literally draft the legislation at the clubhouse, which I've been to, on Jekyll Island. They drafted the legislation, which was the Federal Reserve Act. These bankers and government insiders, it's almost like a movie. They all slipped away and to this island, which was private back then. Now it's owned by the state of Georgia. I think in the 50s, they sold it back to the state, but it was a private retreat for the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and like all the titans of industry back then. They all brag about it now. There's even like a room, the Federal Reserve, a room in the clubhouse on Jekyll Island. But this book tells you essentially what money is, how money works, brings in the debt-based monetary system, how debt works. And then it tells you essentially what's going on right now, the game of how this is being played. So it would be a very, very good read for anyone that's an investor, and especially a real estate investor.
Yeah, definitely. And especially when it comes to investment loans, commercial real estate investment loans, it's different from you purchasing a house of your own, which is usually a fixed 30-year mortgage. It's a lot easier, but with commercial debt, there's a lot more moving pieces with interest rate and payments and etc. So it's important to understand that, and given the macro will help you understand the exit plans and etc. as well. Now, obviously, MC, you've been very successful through, is it a little bit over a decade you've been in the US now? Or how long have you been in the US
2
exactly?
decades. I came here in
2 decades? Okay.
2001. Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh wow, that is crazy. Yeah, 2 decades. It's 13 years for me. So, but through your 2 decades of experience in the US, and I think you've been investing a little bit over a decade as well, from what I understood. What are the advice you would give to people in general that want to achieve more of the cash flow that you and your guests have been achieving in their lives?
Yeah, I think we're in a skills economy, so you need to figure out the problems that exist in this environment and then figure and learn the skills to solve them for people. And by the way, this is probably the greatest time ever to be an entrepreneur or start a business or start a side hustle that becomes a business. There's so many problems. I mean, we could probably list 100 of them just now. There's so many problems all over the world, and entrepreneurs and investors will solve these problems. So how do you solve them? Well, you solve them through your skill sets and your capabilities and your network and the access to other people with skill sets, capabilities, and a network. That's how you solve them. And you create value for people by solving these problems through a process which you use your skill sets and capabilities in your network. So that's why you take them and how you take them from A to B, where they are now to where they want to go. So that's what I would share with folks is figure out what problem you want to solve, what you're passionate about solving, what you could see yourself spending 5 to 10 years on solving, and then figure out the skill sets and capabilities and networks that you would need to solve those problems. There are so many. And there's going to be more, by the way. Things are just going to get more chaotic because we're in a transformation. The world is transforming from where we are now to a completely different world. It started to change in 2020. Most people have realized by now, that I sounded crazy when I said the world is going to fast forward like 10 years and 6 months. I said that in like around March of 2020. It is. And it's only going to transform more. So you have these changes, rapid changes because of technology. You have these technology components being rolled out you name it, whether it's AI, robotic, 5G, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies eventually. So you have all these things going on that's disrupting things. And when things are being disrupted, it manifests itself in the marketplace through fear, panic, hysteria, chaos. It happens all the time. It happened when we went from the agricultural age to the industrial age. And that's where we are
Yeah.
now. So this is a great time for entrepreneurs and investors.
Yeah, definitely. Whether, because a lot of our listeners, they're probably have a W-2 job in the tech space, what executives, and whether you choose to be entrepreneur or not, I think having that mindset will help you solve big problems that typically comes with higher value in the marketplace and higher compensation or profit being created as well. Awesome. Anything else you want to add?
So cashflowninja.com, there's 900 podcast episodes there. We've got a ton of stuff going on. And then yourownbankingsystem.com is the best way to learn more about this life insurance strategy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MC.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast with me, Missy Liu. We hope you enjoy the tips and tricks that others have used to build their American dream and their trinity of freedom. We would love for you to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can also find all the episodes and details on lifemissioncapital.com. Until then, let your life mission go wild.